They didn't forget to invite me. They chose not to. And the moment I saw that RSVP link dumped into the family group chat like a bone tossed to a stray, I knew exactly where I stood. Outside the frame, off the list, and out of their perfect little wedding fantasy. It was 9:42 a.m., a dull Tuesday morning, and I was folding laundry. The kind of menial chore that makes you feel invisible even before someone confirms it for you. My phone buzzed on the counter, and there it was. A link. Here you go, Julia. Champagne bottle emojis. A pink heart. That was it. No photo of the ring. No. Call me. I have news. Just a Google form like I was signing up for a PTA bake sale. I clicked anyway, because curiosity is a reflex. The page opened in muted blush tones with gold script fonts and stock images of mason jars strung with fairy lights. I scrolled through the details, date, venue, menu options, until I reached the RSVP section. One field for my name, one field for meal choice. Nothing else. No +1, no checkbox, no guest name. Just me. Alone. I stared at it for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen like it might summon an option if I waited long enough. Maybe they'd just forgotten. Maybe this was a draft. But then my gut caught up with what my eyes already knew. This wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate. I texted my mom anyway. Hey, I think the RSVP is missing a field? She replied almost instantly, like she'd been waiting for me to notice. Oh, honey, we just assumed you'd be coming alone. You usually are, right? It's easier for the seating chart. Then, the dagger wrapped in a smile. It's a wedding, not a networking event. I didn't reply. There wasn't anything to say that wouldn't sound pathetic. But something in me shifted, went cold and still, like a lake before a storm. That quiet followed me everywhere that week. Into work, where I sat through UX reviews and Slack pings, nodding at wireframes without hearing a word. Into the grocery store, where I stood in line behind couples picking out wine for date night. Into my own apartment, which suddenly felt like a museum of my aloneness. And maybe to someone else, it would have been nothing. Maybe another person would have shrugged it off and laughed about it later. But exclusion isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a surgical cut, clean and deliberate, designed to leave no obvious mark but still draw blood. Let me explain something. I'm not a victim. I'm the oldest sibling, the one who drove her little sister to high school when mom and dad were too busy fighting, the one who lent her money when she lost her first job, the one who picked up the phone at 2 a.m. when her boyfriend dumped her. I've been the safety net so long I forgot what it felt like to fall myself. And now, apparently, I was the extra, the single sister. The problem they didn't want in their pictures. Even my brother got a +1. His new girlfriend, the one he met at a brewery trivia night and couldn't even spell Renaissance correctly, had her name neatly typed on the seating chart. My cousin? She was bringing her personal trainer. But me? I was the inconvenience, the loose thread. I didn't cry, not once, but I did start taking screenshots. The Canva wedding website my sister made herself with Comic Sans headers and blurry engagement photos, leaving the lorem ipsum placeholder text in the About section. The group chat jokes about keeping the tables symmetrical and how awkward single people look in photos. The comments from my mom about how Julia will be fine on her own. They thought I wasn't paying attention. They thought my silence meant I'd accepted my role. Background noise. But silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes silence is just strategy. Because here's the thing about me. I've spent years designing interfaces that people want to click. I know how to build an experience, how to shape a perception, how to make something unforgettable. And if my sister wanted a flawless wedding, she should have remembered that before cutting me out. So, I stayed quiet. I let them think they'd gotten away with it. I let them picture me showing up alone, in some polite little dress, smiling through the humiliation. But inside, I started planning. Not a tantrum, not a scene. Something cleaner, sharper, more memorable. Because if there's one thing you should never underestimate, it's the quiet girl who's had enough. The one with a long memory, a subtle sense of timing, and a Rolodex full of favors waiting to be called in. And it all began with a name I hadn't said aloud in years: Ryan Davis. There's a special kind of irony in being excluded by a group that still expects you to contribute. That's what hit me the hardest in the weeks that followed. Not just the fact that I wasn't welcome, but that I was still useful. I was still the sister who could whip up a quick design or draft something classy on a Sunday night, while they sipped rosé and brainstormed hashtags. I didn't say no. Not yet. Saying no would tip my hand. Instead, I smiled and offered to help with the wedding website. A harmless suggestion tossed into the group chat between emojis and poorly lit brunch photos. No one responded right away, but 3 hours later, my sister texted me privately. Sure, if you have time, just something simple. Nothing too fussy. I went to work. It took me 4 hours. I used a neutral color palette, soft dove grays and ivory tones, with a hint of blush that complemented her Pinterest board. I custom-coded the RSVP logic to track late replies. I wrote their "How We Met" section with the kind of polish that made it sound like a modern fairy tale. Two people bumping into each other at a bookshop, when in reality they met drunk at a Halloween party dressed as a sexy firefighter and a cactus. I knew that because I was there. She doesn't remember. I hit send. No reply. A week later, I saw what they went with. A Canva page with jagged, pixelated photos and Comic Sans headers. The About Us section still had placeholder text, Lorem ipsum doloricit amet. That was the moment I took my first screenshot. The rejection wasn't loud. It was subtle, calculated. I started watching more closely. Every group call had a new detail I wasn't consulted on. Bridesmaid dresses, chosen. Seating arrangements, finalized. Bridal shower, scheduled without me. One call in particular stuck with me. I wasn't muted yet, so I heard her say it clearly. I just want everyone to look good in the photos. Like, paired up. Not, you know, awkward or sad. There was laughter, then a pause. Julia won't mind. I turned off my camera, then my mic, then the call. It wasn't just forgetfulness. It was a gentle, curated exile. And the worst part? They thought they were being kind, as if wrapping the blade in silk made it any less sharp. I needed leverage, not revenge, not yet, just positioning. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, a friend from my undergrad days, now working in event law, the kind of person who knew things, contracts, conflicts, dirt. I asked about someone specific, Ryan Davis. She replied within minutes. Still hot, still single, still hates your sister's fiancé. Want an intro? That text? It was the first time in weeks I smiled without faking it. Ryan and I weren't close in college. We'd run in overlapping circles, study groups, a few parties. He'd dated a woman named Talia, a friend of mine, before ghosting her and graduating into obscurity. I hadn't thought of him in years. Until I remembered something important. Talia had been engaged to my sister's now fiancé, 6 months before his proposal. Messy? Yes. Exploitable? Even better. I found Talia on Instagram. She'd gone full lifestyle influencer, neutral tones, plants in every corner, morning routine reels with soft piano music. I DM'd her casually. Coffee catch up? Old times? She responded within the hour. We met that weekend. I didn't even have to push. Turns out, she wasn't over it. Not even close. He had ghosted her after a 2-year relationship. Vanished without a trace. 2 months later, he was dating my sister. 6 months after that, engaged. According to Talia, there was overlap. According to the receipts? Oh, there was definitely overlap. I should have torched his entire wardrobe, she said, sipping her oat milk latte like it was poison. I leaned in. What if I told you you could still ruin his honeymoon? That got her attention. We talked for 2 hours. She had followers, 40,000 to be exact, and a loyal engagement rate. Her blog had been featured in a few wedding lifestyle pieces. She knew florists, photographers, vendors, all of whom adored her, and none of whom liked being lied to. I'm not saying you post anything, I said. I'm just saying, maybe you save something, just in case. She agreed, enthusiastically. Ryan was harder to track down. No Instagram, no Facebook. But LinkedIn? Alive and well. Corporate attorney. Still in the city. Still as intimidatingly good-looking as he'd been at 22. My friend made the intro. He responded in a day. We met for drinks at a rooftop bar where the cocktails cost more than my groceries. He was smoother now, more refined, but the edge was still there. You're her sister? He said after I laid out the connection. I nodded. And you're his ex's ex. He raised his glass. We make quite the pair. It took exactly 2 drinks and one shared memory of a particularly disastrous Halloween party to seal the deal. He agreed to come to the wedding. As my date. Not a fake boyfriend. Not a revenge fling. Just a well-timed presence. One that would make the groom's stomach twist, make my sister's smile falter, and remind every single person in that room. I'm not just the awkward single one at table 12. I'm the woman who brought the storm. The thing about weddings is, they expose people. Peel back the filtered layers, and what you get is the truth. Who's in, who's out, and who's just useful until the last dance. I learned that the hard way when I showed up to the bridal shop. I wasn't invited. Not officially. But I'd seen the screenshot in the group chat. A beige little rectangle with the address, time, and the words, "Final fitting. So excited." It wasn't meant for me, but they didn't even try to hide it. The shop was a renovated old bookstore, now filled with silk, lace, and overpriced mood boards pretending to be couture. I arrived early, because I'm the type who still believes in giving people the chance to do the right thing, even when I know better. The girl at the desk looked up from her iPad. Name? Julia, sister of the bride. She tapped, paused, looked again. I don't have you on today's schedule. I smiled, cool and polite. Can you check again? Another pause. Her eyes flicked to a clipboard. I'm sorry. There's no appointment under your name. Maybe you're thinking of another day? I stood there for a second, throat tight with something bitter. Then I heard it. Laughter from the back room. My sister's laugh. And another voice. My mom's. Not just the bridal party. My mother was there. The girl didn't ask if I wanted to wait. She just looked at me like I was lost. Or worse, confused. I turned and walked out. My heels clicked against the tile louder than I wanted them to, like punctuation marks to a sentence I didn't get to write. Outside, the spring air was too bright. I stood by my car, hands shaking so slightly I had to shove them into my pockets to keep from noticing. A group of bridesmaids walked in, holding iced coffees and laughing at something I would never be in on. I got in the car and sat there, staring at the steering wheel like it had answers. The text came an hour later. Mom. Oh, honey. Sorry. The fitting was just for the bridal party. You would have been bored anyway. Bored? Like watching your sister try on the dress she'll wear to promise forever, without you, is just a dull matinee. I didn't reply. A few days later, I found out the bachelorette weekend had already happened. A cabin in the mountains. Matching pajamas. Giant glittery wine glasses. I saw it on Instagram. Tucked between hashtags and filtered smiles was my sister, my mom, my cousin Rachel, even the groom's sister, whom my sister once called a human paper cut. But not me. I stared at the screen for so long the image started to blur. The only thing worse than being forgotten is realizing you weren't forgotten at all. You were left out on purpose, quietly, strategically, like an inconvenient piece of furniture that doesn't match the new aesthetic. And still, I showed up. To the gift assembly day, the brunch meeting, the cousin's engagement party, because I wanted them to say it. I wanted someone, anyone, to admit it to my face. But they didn't. They just smiled and handed me tape for the envelope, or a mimosa with too much pulp. Even my brother noticed. "You good?" he asked one night while we were both in the kitchen during a family dinner. "Never better," I said, folding napkins. He watched me for a second. "You know, you don't have to come to everything if you're tired." There it was. The subtle out. The graceful dismount. "I'm not tired," I said. "I'm documenting." He didn't ask what I meant. Smart of him. Meanwhile, the +1 hypocrisy hit its peak. My brother brought a girl he'd been dating for 11 days. I know because she told the whole table the story of how they met. She spilled cider on him at a farmer's market. She laughed too loud, touched his arm constantly, and couldn't pronounce charcuterie. But she got an invite. She got a name card. She got photos. My cousin? She brought her Pilates instructor, a guy who spent the dinner doing calf stretches between courses and calling the fish uninspired. But no one blinked. The worst part? My mom gushed about them. "So lovely to see everyone partnered up. Makes the tables feel so full." Then she turned to me and added, without irony, "You're so independent. I admire that." Like that was the prize. Like being unwanted was a medal for resilience. I didn't speak. Just smiled and took another bite of cold asparagus. That night, back in my apartment, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself the question no one ever wants to admit. Why am I trying so hard to be included by people who clearly don't want me there? And then, just as quickly, because I'm not done yet. They think this is still about a wedding, about a chair, a dress, a guest list. It's not. This is about respect, memory. Every time I dropped everything to help. Every moment I stood beside them when things fell apart. Every second I was the reliable one, the support beam no one thanks, until it's gone and the roof caves in. I don't want revenge. Not really. I want them to remember who I am. And soon, they will. You ever realize you've been cast in someone else's story, only to find out they wrote you as a background character? That's where I was. Somewhere between invisible and inconvenient, smiling in family photos like I wasn't digitally cropped from their real lives. And that's when I stopped waiting to be invited in. Because the truth is, I didn't want a seat at their table anymore. I wanted to build my own, and make them realize just how loud silence can be when you control the volume. So I started making calls. Not dramatic ones. Nothing wild. Just quiet, targeted outreach. One of the benefits of being underestimated is that people don't notice when you start moving behind the scenes. I began with event law. Not because I wanted to sue anyone, but because I needed someone who could speak my language. Contracts, venues, logistics, and secrets. That's where Maya came in. We'd gone to school together. She was one of those people who never posted anything personal, but knew everything about everyone. She was a vault with teeth, and I knew if anyone could help me thread a needle through this mess, it was her. I didn't even have to explain much. Just said I was looking for someone from back in college. Ryan Davis. Her response came in 60 seconds. "Still single, still hot, still has a bone to pick with your sister's fiancé. Want his number?" I did, and I used it. Ryan picked up after 2 rings. His voice hadn't changed, smooth, with just enough edge to make you second-guess your words. We hadn't talked in years, but our conversation picked up like we'd spoken yesterday. Julia, the UX girl with the wine opinions? And you're still the guy who thought Jameson made a good chaser, I replied. He laughed. Guilty. So, to what do I owe the blast from the past? I cut right to it. Your ex-girlfriend was Talia, right? There was a pause. A low exhale. Yeah, he said carefully. Why? She was engaged to my sister's fiancé, until she wasn't. Silence. Then, go on. I laid it out, piece by piece. The omission, the RSVP, the bachelorette weekend I found out about through Instagram. And the real kicker, how my sister's fiancé had ghosted Talia, jumped straight into my sister's life, and scrubbed the timeline clean like no one would notice. Well, he said finally, this is shaping up to be one hell of a wedding. That's the plan, I said. I want you to come. Another pause. As what? My plus one, I replied. The most inconvenient one possible. He didn't laugh this time. He just said, when and where? By the next morning, we were texting. We decided on optics. Not a couple, not a fake relationship. Just presence. Someone who would tilt the air in the room. Ryan had that look that made men uneasy and women recalibrate their posture. He'd show up, say little, and let the tension do the work. But I wasn't done. I reached out to Talia. We hadn't spoken since college either. But I'd followed her blog on and off. 40,000 followers, curated aesthetic, lifestyle content that somehow made avocado toast seem like an act of self-care rather than a snack. I sent a DM. Just said I had a story she might want to hear. We met at a minimalist cafe with white brick walls and tiny succulents on every table. She walked in wearing all beige like she'd come from a linen commercial. But when I mentioned my sister's fiancé, her expression changed. Oh, I remember him, she said, stirring her turmeric latte with calculated grace. He disappeared one morning like I was a hotel bill he didn't want to pay. I nodded. He's marrying my sister. Her hand froze mid-stir. You're kidding. I wish I was. I told her everything. No embellishment, no pity party, just facts. The timeline overlap, the social media erasure, the curated fairy tale. Talia leaned back, arms crossed. He always said he wanted a clean life. Clean lines, no mess. Guess that meant deleting people. She laughed, sharp and short. You want to blow it up? No, I said. I want him to blow it up. All I need is a little nudge. She nodded slowly. You want me to post? Not now, I said. Wait. Wait until everyone's watching, until the tags are live and the florist's Instagram is buzzing. Then drop a photo. A line. Nothing angry. Just a reminder. Subtle poison, she said. Exactly. She grinned. I'm in. I walked out of that cafe feeling like I'd finally stepped into my own power. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was setting the stage. The wedding was 3 weeks away. The guest list was finalized. The tables had been assigned. And me? I was about to arrive with the one man guaranteed to unravel the entire groom's composure, and the one woman whose ghost he'd tried to bury beneath a Tiffany setting. They wanted aesthetics. I was giving them a masterpiece. Weddings are like stage plays, all smoke and illusion until opening night. And the night before? That's the dress rehearsal. The part where everyone pretends they're happy, calm, and ready, even as they silently panic over seating charts and passive-aggressive aunties. I showed up right on time. Not late, not early, just punctual enough to suggest control. I wore a deep navy silk jumpsuit with a subtle gold cuff, sleek, understated but pointedly expensive looking. The kind of outfit that says, you thought I'd show up small, but here I am, unbothered, styled, and absolutely not alone, because right beside me was Ryan Davis. He looked dangerous. Charcoal suit, black shirt, no tie, just the right balance of polished and predatory. His hair was slicked back the way rich men do it, and he wore that practiced smirk like a tailored accessory. When he stepped out of the car and offered me his hand, I took it without hesitation. Let them see. The rehearsal dinner was held at a rustic modern restaurant with exposed beams, Edison bulbs, and enough reclaimed wood to build a small ark. Everyone was already inside, sipping cocktails and complimenting the decor like it hadn't been recycled from Pinterest boards. We walked in together. Slow, casual, controlled, heads turned, eyes widened. And then it happened. The groom saw him. It was subtle. That first flicker of recognition. His jaw twitched. A hand stiffened around his glass. His eyes darted toward my sister, who was chatting with her maid of honor, unaware that the ghost of her fiancé's past had just materialized at her rehearsal dinner, holding hands with the sister she'd tried to exile. I smiled, nodded at him like we were old friends, and then turned to Ryan. Want to mingle? Lead the way, he said, voice like velvet with a razor blade tucked inside. We made our rounds. The overflow table, the wine bar. A few elderly cousins who barely remembered me. Ryan played it smooth, complimenting the venue, laughing politely, throwing in just enough vague career hints to make people Google him later. Everywhere we went, people asked, "So how do you two know each other?" "Blind date," I said, always with a wink. "Mutual friends. Bit of a whirlwind." Ryan never contradicted me. He just stood close, hands in his pockets, gaze slow and intentional. Eventually, the bride noticed us. She turned, all white teeth and performative delight, and walked over with Mom flanking her like a proud campaign manager. "Julia," she said, too loud, too bright. "So glad you made it." I tilted my head. Of course, wouldn't miss it. She turned to Ryan. "And this is—" He extended his hand. "Ryan Davis." The pause was glorious, a nanosecond of silence that roared louder than any outburst. Her eyes flicked, first to Ryan, then to her fiancé, then back to me. "Oh," she said, the word flat as pressed linen. Mom, bless her, tried to salvage the moment. "So nice to see Julia with someone. This is unexpected." Ryan smiled like a man who knew exactly how unexpected he was. "Pleasure's mine," he said. "Everyone's been so welcoming, especially your son-in-law." He said it like a threat disguised as flattery, and it landed. My sister's smile tightened. "Well, we've got lots of people to greet, but enjoy yourselves." She drifted off quickly, pulling Mom with her. I watched them whisper. The groom glanced over his shoulder. Then again. Ryan leaned in. "He's sweating." "Good." We spent the next hour enjoying the slow unravel. A bridesmaid dropped her champagne trying to text under the table. The groom's groomsman, who had once dated Talia for a hot second, actually choked on his appetizer when Ryan introduced himself. I started counting how many times people glanced over. 9, 12, 17. And then the groom cornered me. "Can I talk to you?" I turned, taking my time. "Of course. What's up?" He looked like someone trying to smile through a migraine. "Ryan Davis?" "Yes?" He lowered his voice. "You brought Talia's ex to my wedding." I shrugged. "You didn't give me a +1 option, so I figured I'd bring the most memorable person I knew." His jaw clenched. "This is not the time for games, Julia." I smiled. "Then you shouldn't have excluded me, or lied to Talia, or maybe ghosted her 2 months before proposing to my sister. But I guess we all make mistakes." He stepped back, eyes flicking again to Ryan, who was now chatting with the venue manager like he owned the place. "You planned this," he said. "Of course I did." I walked away before he could answer, because the point wasn't confrontation. It was corrosion. I didn't need to scream. I just needed to plant the right seeds. And from what I could see, the cracks had already begun to form. That night, after the dinner ended and the guests began filing out into the night air, Ryan offered to drive me home. But first, we walked the edge of the venue together. Quiet, a little smug, but not speaking too much. "You good?" he asked. "Better than good," I said. He smiled. "Tomorrow's going to be fun. Tomorrow's going to be unforgettable." As we got in the car, I took one last look at the venue, at the candlelight still glowing through the windows, at the chaos unfolding behind closed doors, at the perfect night about to unravel. They wanted aesthetics. I was giving them performance art. Weddings always have that moment. The hush before the music, the quiet swell of tension as everyone cranes their necks to see who's walking through the door. And when I stepped out of the car that afternoon, I made damn sure that moment belonged to me. I didn't wear red. That would have been too obvious, too loud, too cliché. I wore deep burgundy, silk, custom tailored, fit like a secret. It clung just enough to remind them I knew how to show up. The neckline was a clean architectural curve, sleeveless, strong. And I wore gold, not glittering, not gaudy, just bold. A single statement cuff, the kind that says, "I don't need to borrow sparkle. I bring it." Ryan stepped out behind me in a midnight black suit. No tie. His shirt collar was open just enough to whisper trouble, and the way he moved, slow, effortless, made heads turn before we even hit the steps. The venue was grand, but trying too hard. An old mansion turned event hall. White chairs, hanging floral installations. Too many mason jars for a building with original crown molding. The ceremony was outdoors, guests already seated, light string music drifting over the breeze. As we walked toward the check-in table, I watched the ripple effect start. One head turned, then another. A hand nudged an elbow. Whispers started like sparks catching dry grass. Ryan leaned in. "You're setting fires with every step." I smiled. "Good." The girl at the welcome table blinked when she saw us. "Name?" "Julia," I said. "Sister of the bride. This is my guest." Her eyes hesitated on Ryan. "We weren't expecting—" "He's with me." I said it low, firm, but polite. The kind of voice you use when you've had enough of being erased. She swallowed and handed us programs. Inside, the seating chart confirmed what I already knew. We'd been stuck at the edge. Overflow, next to cousins I hadn't seen since grade school, and a random couple I was pretty sure were the florist's interns. Perfect. The bride's entrance was delayed. No surprise. I imagined her inside, frantically reapplying lipstick and trying to steady her hands after seeing the guest list take an unexpected turn last night. When the ceremony finally started, we stood like everyone else. Ryan slipped his hand into mine, not romantic, strategic. A message. I felt eyes on us the entire time. The vows were brief. He said all the right things, but his voice cracked once. A flicker. Maybe nerves. Or maybe the realization that the past doesn't stay buried. It shows up in silk and smiles. My sister looked radiant, I'll admit that. Hair like a magazine spread, makeup flawless. But her eyes kept darting. She scanned the rows like she was waiting for something to go wrong. I didn't give her the satisfaction. We clapped, smiled, took pictures like perfect guests. But the real art was in the subtle dismantling, the tiny fractures, the fact that every perfect frame had us in the corner. Ryan's hand on my back, my smile too sharp to be innocent. At the cocktail hour, the photographer tried to avoid us, but Ryan made sure we were in the background of half the formal shots. He mingled like a ghost with unfinished business, shaking hands with the groom's coworkers, complimenting the wine to the bride's great-aunt. He was everything I'd hoped for. Elegant chaos. My mom came over eventually. She gave me a side hug like I was contagious. Wow, you look expensive. I tilted my head. Thanks. I am. She didn't laugh. Just looked at Ryan, then back at me, then said, "We were surprised. That you brought someone?" "I figured I'd break the seating chart," I said. "Didn't want to be predictable." Her smile faltered, but she walked away before I could see it crack. That's how the rest of the hour went. People pretending they weren't curious. Bridesmaids sneaking glances. One groomsman actually came over to Ryan and said, "Hey, don't I know you from—" Ryan cut him off with a smooth, "Probably. I'm hard to forget." The man blinked and backed away. Every conversation we had, brief, casual, carried weight. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need a scene. All I had to do was exist loudly in a space they tried to shrink me out of. That was the revenge. Not destruction. Presence. And just before the reception began, the groom found us. He was pale, sweating, still smiling because cameras were everywhere. "Julia," he said through his teeth, "can I speak with you? Alone?" Ryan stepped forward, polite but firm. "We're good here." The groom's jaw tightened. "This is a wedding, not a stunt." I looked him dead in the eye. "Then maybe you shouldn't have built your wedding on lies." His face blanched. "You don't get to erase history," I added. "Not when it still remembers your name." I didn't wait for a response. We walked into the reception hall like we owned the place. And in a way, we did. If the ceremony was the stage, the reception was the battlefield. That's where the real show unfolds. Wine flowing like truth serum, seating charts engineered to avoid drama, and every fork clink echoing through tension no one wants to name. They'd stuck us at the furthest table, corner of the room, by the kitchen doors. The kind of placement reserved for people you're obligated to invite, but hope will politely fade into the background. I didn't mind. Ryan didn't either. We knew how to make a spotlight out of shadows. Our table mates were a mix of forgotten cousins, an awkward work friend of the groom, and some woman who spent 20 minutes describing her dog's gluten allergy, a curated irrelevance. We smiled, nodded, played along. Until we didn't. See, Ryan had a gift. He didn't just exist. He shifted energy. He could drop into a conversation like a scalpel into silk. So when he leaned toward the groom's college friend and asked casually, "So, you all kept in touch after the split with Talia?" I saw the first crack. The guy choked on his wine. I gently touched Ryan's arm like I was embarrassed. "Oh, you know so much history," I said, laughing softly. "Sometimes more than you should." The table fell quiet for a moment. A perfect pause. Then someone changed the subject. But the wound was opened. Small, slow bleeding. By the time the appetizers were cleared, we had rebranded the overflow table into the most interesting corner of the room. People leaned over from nearby seats, curious. A bridesmaid even slipped away from her assigned table just to whisper, "You look amazing, by the way. And your date?" Wow. I just smiled and sipped my wine. The real tension hit when the toasts began. The best man gave a predictably forgettable speech, jokes about college, one weird anecdote about a camping trip no one understood. Then the maid of honor, my sister's college roommate, delivered a love letter to their friendship that somehow involved 3 separate soulmate metaphors and a Taylor Swift lyric. Applause, laughter, forced tears. The MC stepped up next. "We now open the floor to anyone else who'd like to say a few words. Family, friends. If you're feeling inspired, the mic is yours." Silence. Polite smiles. And then I stood up. I didn't rush. I didn't look around for permission. I simply rose, picked up my champagne flute, and walked calmly to the front of the room. The mic was still warm from the last speaker. I adjusted it slightly, cleared my throat, and began. "I wasn't sure I was going to say anything today, I said, my voice even. But then I remembered something my sister once said. I just want everyone to look good in the photos. Polite chuckles. I smiled too. And here I am, with the best date in the room. That got a bigger laugh. Not everyone, but enough. A ripple across the crowd. I saw a few eyebrows rise, some shoulders stiffen. I kept going. I wasn't given a seat at the table, so I brought my own chair. Turns out the view's better from here. That hit. Hard. Gasps. Real ones. I saw my mother lower her glass, her lips pressed thin. The groom's face turned to stone. My sister sat perfectly still, her nails digging into the back of her new husband's hand. I raised my glass. To the happy couple, I said, may your future be as flawless as your seating chart. I clinked the glass gently, smiled, and walked back to my seat as the MC fumbled for control. Ryan was already standing, pulling out my chair like we were the stars of a Netflix miniseries. He leaned in as I sat. Poetic, he whispered. Necessary, I said. The rest of dinner was tense in the best possible way. Forks scraped plates. Conversations turned hushed. A few people asked if I'd meant what I said. I gave them nothing but polite nods and another sip of champagne. Later, I caught my sister outside, in the garden lights, vaping like she hadn't done since college. Her hands were shaking. You really couldn't help yourself, could you? She snapped. Wasn't on the speaker list, I replied, coolly. You're so bitter. No, I said, stepping closer. I'm just done playing small so you can feel big. She stared at me, eyes wide, but she didn't respond, because she knew. This wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't even about the wedding. It was about every moment before this. The years of being the helper, the fixer, the dependable older sister they never quite saw. The one who smoothed the edges, cleaned up the mess, and then was politely uninvited from the photograph. Now they would remember me in every frame. Some things don't need fire to burn. Sometimes all it takes is a whisper in the right room, a glance too long, a truth too well-timed. That was my toast. It wasn't long, wasn't crude, wasn't even particularly loud. But it hit like a grenade tucked in a velvet box. The reception never fully recovered. After I sat down, the MC stumbled through his notes and ushered in the first dance like nothing had happened. But people weren't watching the couple. They were watching me. Even as the music played, some soft, overused Ed Sheeran track, the air hadn't settled. You could feel it in the glances being traded around the room. The way the bride clung to her new husband's shoulder like it was a lifeline. The way his eyes kept darting, scanning, searching. I didn't watch them dance. I didn't need to. I watched Ryan instead. He sipped his wine with the slow patience of a man watching a machine malfunction exactly as predicted. He caught my gaze and raised his glass. You're winning, he mouthed. I didn't mouth anything back, because I wasn't done yet. The moment the dance ended, I got up and stepped outside. Not for air, for position. The patio overlooked the reception hall through tall glass windows. From there, I had a perfect view of the couple making their rounds, thanking guests, posing for photos. My sister was smiling, but it was brittle. Her eyes twitched every time someone pulled out a phone. She was waiting for it, anticipating it. I pulled out my own phone. Talia had texted me 30 minutes ago. Talia, you sure? Me. Do it. It was one photo, one caption, a throwback, posted to her blog and Instagram simultaneously. Her and the groom on a beach, mid-laugh, arms wrapped around each other. Sunset behind them. Clearly romantic, clearly not innocent. And the caption? Some guys never change, wishing the new bride better luck than I had. I watched it hit in real time. The first sign was a bridesmaid's phone lighting up. Then another. Someone gasped, audibly. A cousin dropped their drink. The DJ stumbled in his playlist and accidentally skipped to a breakup ballad. Then came the mother of the groom. Her phone buzzed, and she froze. The groom noticed. He asked what was wrong. She showed him. His face went paper white. I didn't move. Just stood there by the railing, phone tucked into my clutch, watching the ripple become a wave. Inside, the bride stepped off the dance floor. She grabbed his arm. They were talking fast now. Lips tight. Gestures sharp. She kept looking around like the walls were listening. They were. A few people were already whispering. Someone started typing furiously on their phone. I caught a cousin's teenage daughter showing the photo to a table of tweens. They all gasped. The venue staff didn't care. They just kept passing hors d'oeuvres and pouring wine. But I could tell. The party was changing. Ryan joined me outside, hands in his pockets. You dropped it? He asked. Talia did. He smiled. Groom looks like he's about to faint. Good. Bride looks like she's about to combust. I nodded. Also good. The photographer came out for a smoke. He noticed us and hesitated, then smiled and walked over. You two photograph well, he said. Do we? I asked. Absolutely. Got a few great ones of you during the toast. Make sure you keep those, I said. They'll age well. He laughed, nodded, and walked off. I could feel Ryan watching me, amused. You're not going to say anything else? He asked. No, I said. The echo's loud enough. And it was. By the time we went back inside, the entire atmosphere had shifted. What was supposed to be a champagne dream was now a slow-motion panic. The bride had disappeared. Someone said she was crying in the bridal suite. The groom was talking to the DJ, trying to stall the garter toss. Too late. The hashtag had been hijacked. The comments on Talia's post were climbing. Over 2,000 now? People were tagging the venue, the florist, the wedding planner. Some were even tagging my sister, unaware that she was the new bride in question. And me? I just danced. One song. With Ryan. A slow one. Not sexy. Not dramatic. Just calm. Present. Centered. The woman in the room who was supposed to fade, now standing in the only spotlight anyone cared about. After the song, a bridesmaid passed by and muttered, "You're such a bitch." I smiled. You finally noticed. Then Ryan and I walked out early, hand in hand, before dessert, before cake, before they could spin it any other way. We didn't need the ending. We were the climax. It didn't hit me until the next morning, just how far the ripple would travel. I woke up to the soft clink of a coffee mug and the smell of something buttery. Ryan had made eggs, barefoot, relaxed, acting like we hadn't just set a wedding on fire with a single Instagram post. He slid me a mug across the counter and nodded toward my phone. You should check. I already had 20 notifications before I'd even unlocked the screen. Talia's post had detonated. It had started slow. Comments from her followers, a few loyal lifestyle fans who remembered the ghosting saga and were now piecing things together. Then came the tags. Someone had asked, "Is this about that groom who dumped you out of nowhere?" Another person answered, "Wait, isn't he marrying the blonde influencer from the Hudson Valley?" And then the flood came in. Because someone, some bored guest with a good angle, had posted a clip from the wedding toast. My toast. A blurry video, but the audio was clear. I wasn't given a seat at the table, so I brought my own chair. Turns out the view's better from here. It was 15 seconds of polished vengeance, wrapped in silk and steel, and by morning it had already passed 10K likes. By noon, it hit 100K. Chair Girl was trending on TikTok. I sat there in my kitchen, in Ryan's old t-shirt, watching my family's carefully curated day become a case study in digital drama. The comment sections were ruthless. "She's a legend. This is why you never erase the quiet sister. I need this woman to narrate my life. This is the softest, cleanest cut I've ever seen. Respect. Is this what elegant rage looks like? Because I want to bottle it. Talia's post had crossed 500K likes by the afternoon. Wedding vendors started getting tagged. The florist posted a statement. We were unaware of the couple's relationship timeline. We do not condone emotional manipulation or deception. The venue remained silent. The photographer posted a teaser photo of me and Ryan. Not the bride, not the groom. Us. Caption. Some moments just steal the room. And the hashtags? Harm wedding drama. Dark X's at the altar. Clock Chairgirl Chronicles. Clock Sister Revenge. Know your guest list. It was a digital forest fire. No flames, just embers catching everywhere. I didn't say a word. Neither did Ryan. He cooked. He read. He kissed me on the back of the neck while I scrolled. Then my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in a while. Mom. You ruined your sister's wedding. That was the first line. Everyone is talking about it. She's crying. The in-laws are furious. How could you embarrass her like this? I stared at the screen. Not, he embarrassed her. Not, they should have included you. Just, you ruined it. I didn't reply. Then came a message from my sister. What did I ever do to you? I actually laughed. Out loud. A dry, bitter laugh that felt like years of swallowing pride had finally dissolved into smoke. I typed a response, then deleted it, then typed another. You cut me out. Over and over. You made me a ghost. I just showed up wearing skin. Send. Blocked her. Blocked Mom. I needed air. Ryan and I went out that night. Not to celebrate, just to breathe. A low-key bar, dim lighting, quiet music. No one approached us. No one took photos. But someone did recognize me. A woman near the bar, probably early 30s, leaned in as I passed her. You're her, aren't you? She said. The one from the toast. I didn't answer, just smiled slightly. She held up her glass. Respect. That was it. No selfie. No intrusion. Just respect. Back home, Ryan tossed his jacket on a chair, kicked off his shoes, and dropped next to me on the couch. They'll never look at you the same, he said. They never really looked at me to begin with, I replied. But he was right. The story had flipped. I wasn't the single sister anymore. I wasn't the oversight. I wasn't the forgotten name on the seating chart. I was the storm they didn't see coming. And the best part? I still hadn't raised my voice once. The silence was louder than anything that had come before it. No more texts. No more DMs. The comment sections had slowed. The hashtags, once a wildfire, now flickered like embers, still smoldering, but no longer feeding the air. And my family? Radio silence. It took 2 days before my mom called. I didn't answer. She called again. This time, she left a voicemail. You made a scene, she said. You embarrassed your sister. You should apologize. I listened to the whole thing, then deleted it. Because here's the thing about scenes. They're only a problem when they don't serve your narrative. But I wasn't in their story anymore. I had finally stepped out of the margins. And I wasn't going back. The guilt never came. Not even in the quiet moments. What did come was clarity. The kind that only shows up when the dust settles and you realize, maybe you weren't the villain. Maybe you were just the first one to stop pretending. A week after the wedding, I got a text from Ryan. Dinner? No cameras? No speeches? Just us. It was simple, kind, no pressure. We met at a quiet place downtown. Low lighting, no trend-chasing dishes, no one snapping pictures of their appetizers. Just food, space, and breath. He pulled my chair out, sat across from me. No smirk this time. Just steady eyes and something close to relief. So, he said, any regrets? I stirred my drink slowly. Thought about it. Not really. He raised an eyebrow. Not even a little? I shook my head. I didn't blow anything up. I just stopped shrinking. He nodded slowly. Still, it changed things. Things needed to change. He didn't argue, and that was the difference. He never asked me to be smaller, never expected me to apologize for the space I took up. Maybe that's why this whole thing worked. Not because we were perfectly aligned, but because we both knew what it meant to be erased. We toasted. Quietly. To what? I don't even remember. Later that night, I got home to another message, this time from my cousin, the one who brought her personal trainer to the wedding. Just wanted to say, I noticed. I saw it happen. And I'm sorry I didn't say anything earlier. I sat with that one for a while. Because it wasn't a grand apology. It wasn't fireworks. It was the smallest, most honest thing anyone in that family had sent me in months. Acknowledgement. That's all I'd wanted, really. To not be invisible. To be seen for who I was. Not just who they needed me to be. The support system. The extra chair. The footnote. Now they'll remember me. Not as a villain. Not as a victim. But as a force. Because the truth is, I didn't ruin anything. I showed up. I dressed with intention. I brought a man who embodied consequences. I gave a toast that told the truth. I let someone else speak the part they'd been gagged from saying. And I walked away with my head high. My sister didn't reach out again. Not to apologize. Not to explain. And I don't think she will. Because people like her don't like mirrors held too close. She'll move on. Rebrand. Probably pretend it never happened. Maybe she'll start some PR recovery on Instagram, family brunches, filtered sunsets, some long caption about protecting your peace. But the internet never forgets. And neither will the people in that room. Not the bridesmaid who whispered bitch under her breath. Not the cousin who couldn't look me in the eye. Not the groom who flinched when Ryan said Talia. They'll remember the woman who brought her own chair. And me? I'll remember that it didn't take rage, or revenge, or destruction. Just presence. And the willingness to stop apologizing for taking up space.